The Book of Revelation and the context of the horsemen. The Book of Revelation is one of the most intriguing and challenging texts in Scripture, revealing visions and prophecies about the last days and divine judgment. Written by the Apostle John while he was exiled on the island of Patmos, Revelation reveals a series of events that, according to the Bible, will unfold at the end of times. This book is filled with symbolism, visions of angels, trumpets, and mystical figures like the Four Horsemen, each representing specific calamities. With each seal opened, a new stage of judgment is revealed, showing that there is divine order even in the chaos that is to come. The Four Horsemen appear in chapter 6, when Jesus, the Lamb of God, begins to open the seals of the sealed book, which no one but him is worthy to open. Each horseman represents an aspect of destruction that will spread across the world, bringing messages of conquest, war, famine, and death. These intense symbols have been the subject of many debates and interpretations over the centuries, and they continue to spark curiosity and even fear in readers. After all, what exactly do these horsemen represent, and what will be their impact on the signs of the times? In the symbolism of Revelation, the Four Horsemen are not just figures of terror, they are also a powerful reminder of divine judgment. Each of these horsemen has a specific role, showing that there is purpose even in calamity. This concept challenges human understanding, as it reveals a God who allows destruction as a form of justice and correction for a world engulfed in sin and corruption. As we ponder this, we are prompted to reflect. Are these calamities already happening around us as signs of the times? Here is where it gets interesting. Though fearsome, these visions were not given to generate terror, but to highlight the need for vigilance and spiritual preparation. Christians are called to observe the signs of the times and reflect on their own path. Are we truly paying attention to what's around us? The horsemen may be mysterious figures, but their presence serves a clear purpose, to show that judgment is a certainty and that there is a path of redemption for those who seek refuge in God. The introduction to the Four Horsemen thus opens a door to understanding what is to come and how it fits into God's plan. In the next section, we will explore the first horseman, the one who comes riding a white horse. He bears a crown and a bow, symbolizing conquest and deception, a powerful beginning to the series of judgments to follow. The first horseman, the rider on the white horse, conquest and deception. The first horseman, who rides a white horse, is a figure wrapped in mystery and duality. He holds a bow and wears a crown, indicating a position of power and authority, but his purpose is far from noble. Many scholars believe this horseman represents conquest, but not merely territorial or political conquest. He also symbolizes deception and false peace. It's like a calm before the storm, a false sense of security that deceives people. In modern times, we might see this in leaders and ideologies that promise security and prosperity, but hide the truth. The image of the white horse can be confusing, as white is a color that usually symbolizes peace and purity. However, this horseman represents a deceptive conquest, a victory that misleads and diverts people from their true purpose. He is the one who comes with a false message of salvation, attracting those in search of hope but offering only illusions. This figure teaches us about the dangers of spiritual deception, false messiahs, and anything that promises peace and salvation outside of God's path. In practical terms, how can we identify these deceptions in our lives? One way is to examine where we place our trust and hopes. Are we being drawn by empty promises? Or are we grounded in the eternal promises of the Bible? Being aware of the white horse means understanding that not every conquest or promise of peace is truly from God. Today, for instance, we are bombarded with messages of instant success and quick prosperity, but we must be cautious. Are we gaining something real or falling for deception? This horseman reminds us that judgment begins with deception and false peace, a strategy of the enemy to lead people away from the truth. Vigilance is essential to avoid being misled. And close behind the white horse comes the rider on the red horse, representing an even harsher stage of judgment: war and violence. The second horseman, the rider on the red horse, war and violence. If the first horseman brings illusory peace, the second breaks this illusion with brutal force, riding a red horse and wielding a sword. He symbolizes war and violence, division among nations, friends, and even families. The Bible tells us that this horseman takes peace from the earth, allowing humanity to experience uncontrolled conflict. His arrival reminds us how wars and armed conflicts are signs of judgment and reflect a world separated from God, showing the consequences of a fallen world. The red horse makes us think of history itself, which is filled with wars and strife. The 20th century, for example, was marked by devastating conflicts like the World Wars, bringing unimaginable destruction. But today, wars are not limited to physical battles. They manifest on social media, in political debates, and even in homes, where violence and hatred divide people. Thus, this horseman appears not only in traditional wars, but in all forms of discord that disrupt peace. Practically speaking, this horseman urges us to resist the temptation to fuel unnecessary arguments and disputes. Instead of fostering hatred, the Bible teaches us to seek peace and unity, reminding us that true followers of Christ are peacemakers. The peace God offers is different from the deceptive peace of the first horseman. It is lasting and authentic. To pursue this peace, why not start with small acts of reconciliation in our lives? Talking to someone we've distanced from, or promoting peace where there is conflict. The rider on the red horse is a reminder that, in the last days, war will be a powerful sign, and we must choose how to react to this violence. But after him comes something equally troubling: the rider on the black horse, who represents famine and scarcity. The third horseman, the rider on the black horse, famine and scarcity. The vision of the rider on the black horse brings an image of scarcity and need. He holds a scale, indicating that food will be rationed and that the essential will become inaccessible. This horseman represents hunger and lack, and the Bible describes how wheat and barley will become expensive while oil and wine will be spared. This is a clear sign of a time when vital resources will be controlled and limited, a reflection of a world that fails to share enough. The black horse symbolizes inequality, where some have much while many have little. We can see this around the world. While some amass wealth, millions still live in extreme poverty, without enough food. This horseman is a reminder of how greed and selfishness manifest in hunger and scarcity, punishing a society that has failed to care for everyone. The effects are clear: food crises, rising prices, and dependence on the most vulnerable. To avoid this scenario in our lives, the lesson here is generosity and responsibility. How can we help? By donating food, supporting needy families, or simply promoting conscious consumption in our daily lives. Small gestures make a huge difference, and the Bible teaches us to share what we have with those in need. And if the black horse represents hunger, the next horseman brings an even more devastating calamity: death itself. Before we continue, leave your like and subscribe to the channel to be blessed with more videos to inspire your life. The fourth horseman, the rider on the pale horse, death and destruction. The fourth horseman, riding a pale horse, is described in the Bible as the very personification of death, and with him comes hell, ready to claim what remains. This ominous figure is one of the most impactful, as he represents the final stage of judgment on earth. He symbolizes death on a large scale, whether by pestilence, famine, or even the wars and disasters brought by the other horsemen. This horseman is the pinnacle of destruction, where human mortality becomes evident. Many see him as a warning of life's fragility and the urgency of preparing spiritually. After all, death is a certainty for everyone, and in light of this fact, each person must reflect on their life and relationship with God. This horseman reminds us how natural disasters, epidemics, and tragedies reveal human vulnerability, leading to the one certainty: time is short and judgment is inevitable. In everyday life, this horseman teaches us the importance of being at peace with God and with others. Each day, we are reminded of life's uncertainty and the need to value the present. For those who seek a heart at peace, the path lies in seeking a life that makes a difference, forgiving, and living with purpose. This deep reflection helps us understand the impact of the Four Horsemen and their meaning in the Christian faith. The symbolism behind the colors of the horses and the horsemen. Each of the Four Horsemen's horses is described with a specific color, and these colors carry important symbolism. The first horseman's white horse initially represents purity and peace, but hides an intention of deception and false conquest. It's a color that confuses, as it's normally associated with good things. But here, it points to the danger of disguising evil intentions. This horseman's message is that not everything that seems good truly comes from God, teaching us to be careful of things that appear harmless. The red horse of the second horseman symbolizes bloodshed and violence. Red is an intense color associated with anger and war, representing conflicts that will shake peace on earth. This horse reminds us of the reality of wars and human conflicts that are becoming increasingly common and intense. It is a clear symbol that, without God, true peace cannot be achieved. It's a warning that, in a divided world, Christians must act as peacemakers. The black horse of the third horseman symbolizes hunger and scarcity. Black represents the darkness of need and despair. It reminds us that, in times of crisis, essential goods become rare and expensive. This symbol calls us to reflect on the need for balance and generosity concerning resources. We live in an age of abundance for some and extreme need for others, and the black horse is a reminder that human selfishness can lead to much greater destruction. Finally, the pale horse, ridden by the fourth horseman, symbolizes death. Pale is a color that evokes illness and decay, and its presence is ominous, as it is followed by hell. This horse represents the inevitable end, human mortality, and the result of divine judgment. It is a color that warns of the point of no return, where there is no more time for regret. For the Christian, this horseman is a reminder that life is finite and that every day is an opportunity to seek redemption and peace with God. The impact of the Four Horsemen on the end times and Christian reflection on final judgment. The Four Horsemen of the apocalypse represent aspects of a judgment that, according to the Bible, will come upon the world as part of the signs of the times. These horsemen are harbingers of a cycle of destruction and disorder that, according to Christian faith, will accompany the final judgment. They show us that the world is temporary, that divine justice is inevitable, and that everyone will one day be accountable for their actions. In contemplating this vision, Christians are led to reflect on their own lives and the meaning of salvation offered by Jesus. The horsemen remind us of humanity's vulnerability to wars, famine, and disasters, which are already a reality in parts of the world. For some, these horsemen are a metaphor for crises humanity already faces, while others view them as a literal prophecy of what is to come. Either way, they show that each person should reflect on the state of their own heart and relationship with God. The end times generate fear but also invite spiritual preparation. In practical terms, this reflection leads us to consider our daily actions, seeking reconciliation, practicing generosity, and living in peace with others. The Bible teaches that those who follow Jesus' teachings and seek to live with integrity will find refuge, while those who ignore these warnings will face the severity of judgment. This doesn't mean living in fear, but with awareness. Every day, we have the opportunity to choose the path of life, to do good, and to live with purpose. And if the world is nearing its end, as many believe, the Christian's role is to remain vigilant, remember God's promises, and act as a light in the darkness. Although terrifying, the Four Horsemen also bring a call for transformation, so that, in the end, we may be at peace with God. After all, Revelation ends with a promise of new life and a new heaven and earth where suffering will be no more. Thinking of the Four Horsemen, then, Christians are invited to deepen their faith, reflect on their role, and embrace a life aligned with the divine purpose.